welcome back for another video where we talk about a specific person in history. This guy and his story are incredible, and it is quite the wild ride. Today we'll be learning about the guy who just wouldn't die, Mr. Grigori Rasputin. Rasputin was born on around January 22nd of the year 1869. He was born in Siberia, Russia, to a peasant family. Because of their status and lack of funds, he received little schooling. He likely remained illiterate throughout his life. Some people in his village actually believed him to have magical, mystical powers in his youth. It is said that he, at one time, somehow identified the thief who stole his father's horse, and then he went on to keep identifying thieves. When Rasputin was around 18 years old, he converted religions and then spent 3 months in a monastery. He didn't actually end up becoming a monk, although his nickname did become the Mad Monk. He instead went on to marry Praskovia Fyodorovna at the age of 19. The two had 3 children together. His life as a family man, however, didn't last long. In his early 20s, in the year 1897, Rasputin dived heavily back into religion. He began wandering around for the next few years. His travels took him to Greece, the Middle East, and he made several trips to Jerusalem. This wandering eventually led him to St. Petersburg, Russia in 1903. Here, he arrived with the same reputation he had when he was younger, with people believing he had supernatural powers and was able to heal people. This is where things start getting interesting and really picking up for Rasputin. 2 years later, in 1905, he was introduced to Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Alexandra. The two were looking for someone to help their son Alexei with hemophilia. With Rasputin's reputation for magically healing, he was in. Eventually, Rasputin was summoned to the palace and actually ended up curing Alexei of his hemophilia. He then told them that their fates were now linked with his. Alexandra was definitively in his corner after he healed their son, and this would be the beginning of his increasing influence with the royal family. While in court, Rasputin put on the image of a humble, holy fella. Outside of court, however, was a completely different story. He fell back into his scandalous activities of drinking and convincing women that being with him intimately had a healing effect or a purifying effect. Any talk of this to Nicholas by anyone meant their downfall or exile from the court, as he truly believed Rasputin was incapable of such acts. After all, he was a holy man who had healed their son. This was until 1911 when P.A. Stolypin, the prime minister, sent a report to Nicholas detailing all of Rasputin's misdeeds. Nicholas took action and sent him from court, but Alexandra had him brought back within months. From then on, Nicholas would ignore any further accusations against Rasputin, considering his wife so badly wanted him there, and they believed their son's health depended on Rasputin. Rasputin's level of influence within the royal family really became evident when Nicholas left the palace in 1915 in order to command his army. During this time, Alexandra was in charge of all domestic affairs for Russia. Who do you think was whispering in her ear and influencing every decision that she made? And it didn't help that Alexandra truly trusted Rasputin and considered him her closest advisor. She dismissed all those who tried to convince her that the Mad Monk was not to be trusted, but her confidence in him wouldn't be shaken. Now, shortly before his death, Rasputin sent a letter to Nicholas that warned that if he should be killed by government officials, the entire royal family would be killed by their own people. Part of the letter to the Tsar read, "If it was your relations who have wrought my death, then no one in the family, that is to say none of your children or relations, will remain alive for more than 2 years. They will be killed by the Russian people." Both of these things would come to pass. On December 29, 1916, Rasputin was invited to the house of Prince Felix Yusupov. There, Yusupov and his conspirators, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, first cousin of the Tsar himself, and Vladimir Pershkevich, attempted to poison Rasputin with wine and cakes that were laced with cyanide. The cyanide seemed to have no effect on Rasputin, so instead the men shot him multiple times. After initially being shot, it said he ran from the room into the courtyard where he was shot again. Somehow he was apparently still living. They finally beat him and proceeded to wrap him in a sheet or rug before throwing him into the icy Neva River. The body was recovered a few days later, and the cause of death was said to be hypothermia. It's also said that his arms were in an upright position, leading to speculation that he was still alive and attempted to claw himself out of the icy river. The autopsy might have also suggested he had enough poison in him that he should have died from that alone, although this fact is controversial. Rasputin was buried by Alexandra, but his final rest would not be peaceful, as his body was later uncovered and burned in the woods in March of 1917. Something making Rasputin so legendary, aside from his reputation for healing and magic, was just his determination to not die. As you can see from this story of his death, it took every manner of trying to finally kill him. He actually also had another attempt on his life in 1914 when a prostitute stabbed him in the stomach, but he also survived that despite losing a lot of blood and being very near death. It would take poison, bullets, a beating, and drowning to finally kill him 2 years after that attempt. The first part of Rasputin's letter to Nicholas had come to pass with his death at the hands of government officials. The second part would come to pass 15 months later when the Tsar and his family were in fact killed during the Russian Revolution. By the time they were murdered by members of the Bolshevik secret police, Nicholas had already abdicated his throne and was imprisoned alongside his family. He had given up the throne in March 1917 and spent the next year being shuffled from house to house with his family until July 17, 1918, when Nicholas, Alexandra, and their 5 children were gunned down, effectively ending the Romanov line. So that's all the information I have for today. The rise of Rasputin and the fall of both Rasputin and the Romanovs, all in one video. It's no wonder Rasputin's reputation precedes him if even half of the story of his death is to be believed. I'm sure he wasn't actually supernatural in any way, but his determination to live despite everything that was done to him sure makes you second guess. Thank you for watching today's video and for learning a little bit about Rasputin. I'll see you next time.